Opulent Podcast is not suitable for children of any age. Opulent Podcast is intended for mature audiences and entertainment purposes only. Hello, my name is Alberto Lara, and welcome to Opulent Podcasts. Life is a lot like playing Dungeons and Dragons. There is a basic setup, a decision we have to make, and a result that unfolds. In Dungeons and Dragons, there is a dungeon master that creates and describes a world where players have to find their treasures. In life, we also have to find our own treasure. It's called happiness or joy. In Dungeons and Dragons and in life, there are different races of characters, different classes, intelligence, and moral alignment, which is how every character reacts in certain circumstances. The Dungeon Master uses monsters and magic items to create difficulties for every character. In life, we also experience difficulties, setbacks, and we also face monsters. But these monsters are within ourselves. They are worry, anxiety, depression, doubt, fear, anger, hate, guilt, and greed, and any other negativity that takes away our peace. If you don't think these are monsters, think of anger. Everyone has done or said something when they're angry that they regret later. We've all done something that we wouldn't necessarily say or do when we're calm, like punch a wall or hurt somebody's feelings. Doubt is another monster within us that if we listen to it, if we dwell on our doubts, we'll spiral ourselves to failure. Imagine if Michael Jordan didn't have faith in himself, and faith is the opposite of doubt. In Dungeons & Dragons, a player can access a player's handbook that contains everything in the basic rules as well as additional choices, maps, and all sorts of extra information. We also have a player's handbook to life that gives instructions on how to think, a treasure map to help us navigate through the Labyrinth of Life. And like every treasure map, the Treasure Map of Life has riddles to solve, so we can find what we're all looking for: peace. Because we cannot be happy if we don't have peace. We cannot even sleep well without peace. The Instructional Book of Life teaches us how to think, behave, recognize our enemies and dangers, what matters, what doesn't, and how to get along through the maze of life as healthy, safely, secure, and happy as possible. But the riddles in the Instructional Handbook of Life are not just a mystery to understand. They are also difficult to find, because the riddles are written to lead us on a wild goose chase. Searching for the riddles is looking for a needle in a stack of needles. Only it's words that we're looking for in a stack of words, or I should say a sea of words. If we don't know what we're looking for, we can easily miss the exit to the truth and end up running around in endless circles. Dungeons & Dragons gives each character a sheet with values or virtues: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Another important feature in Dungeons & Dragons is the Amor Class, which is a number designated to tell how hard a character can be hit in a fight and remain standing, based on the armor the character is wearing and if they have a shield. We are also instructed to wear an armor in the Treasure Map of Life, in the Player's Handbook, the Instructional Book to Life. However, it's not about a real armor, but a psychological armor which one must think of every day to maintain our own peace of mind and sanity from the negativity in the world we live in. The Instructional Book of Life is more of a psychological book than a literal book, because we don't just live in a physical reality. We also experience an emotional and psychological reality, and our psychological reality controls the emotional and the physical aspects of our life. The instructional book on how to think is in parables. The main character in the instructional book of life spoke to his followers in parables, and he did not speak anything to them without using a parable. That is written in Matthew 13, verse 34, and Mark 4, verse 33. So if the main character in the Bible spoke in parables, what makes anyone think the secret messages and mysteries spread throughout the Bible are not riddled? Yet many are convinced that the scriptures are to be taken literally, missing the whole point of the message. That's why so many people in society, of all religions, of all echelons, and of all intellects of life, are not happy. But first, we must find the parables before they can even make sense. There are key words to look for when reading the instructional book of life. Whenever a parable refers to God, kingdom of heaven, or the Lord, it is referring to the mind and the emotional hearts, but mainly to the mind, our thoughts, our imagination, our perspective or point of view. When a parable refers to earth, Israel, Jerusalem, or any geographical location, it is referring to the body. Therefore, within the parables, the kingdom of heaven is the mind, and the earth is our body. And not everything is a message. Some of the scriptures are historical, some are poems, others are fundamental wisdom anybody can live by, and some are literally babble to hide the secrets of the Christ in plain sight. It's written in Ephesians 3 verse 4 that upon reading this, we will understand the mysteries of Christ. In Exodus 3 verse 14, or as I like to remember it by Exodus Pi, it states that God's name is I Am. The Christ said that the greatest and most important commandment is to love God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. That's written in Mark 12 verses 29 through 30 and Matthew 22 verses 37 to 38. So ask yourself, who is God again? Exodus Pi refers to God as I Am. This parallels what every motivational speech, inspirational speaker, life coach, self-help book, and counselor states, that we must be happy with ourselves before we can be happy with anybody else. That we must help ourselves before we can help anyone else. Even the airplane safety pamphlets instruct us to put on our own mask before we can help others with theirs. And the second greatest commandment is to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. So back to the topic of the armor we are instructed to wear. In Ephesians 6 verses 10 to 17, we are instructed to put on the armor of God. The parable of the armor of God, or the armor of oneself. Ephesians 6 verse 10. Finally, be strong in the Lord and His mighty power. In other words, be strong in mind and the power of your own mind. Ephesians 6 verse 11. The armor of God. Put on the full armor of God so that you can stand against the tactics and schemes of evil. In other words, use all your mental strength to stand against the tactics and schemes of negativity that is constantly bombarding our mind from division in society, injustices, violence, and fear tactics. Ephesians 6 verse 12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood enemies, but against rulers, against authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. All this means is our struggle is not against our fellow citizens, but against the rulers authorities, and the powers of this dark world against the psychological forces of negativity in our mental realms. Spiritual and psychological merges in the study of thoughts and emotion. Evil is negativity, and the heavenly realms is our mental state or our state of mind. All the negativity that the news, the media, politicians, even commercials constantly put out. Our television commercials promote diseases and are constantly talking about drugs that cause more ailments than they heal. Ephesians 6 verse 13. So put on all the armor that God gives, that when that evil day comes, you will be able to defend yourself. And when the battle is over, you will be standing firm. In other words, use all the mental faculties that you have. So when the negative day comes, the bad day, you will be able to defend yourself or keep your sanity. And when that day is done, when the day is over, at the end of the day, you will be standing firm. Ephesians 6 verse 14. Stand firm, then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, righteousness like armor on your chest. It's basically stating and instructing us to be honest. Say the truth. Don't lie. To the best of your ability, be honest. And righteousness. To do the right thing. Pursue rectitude in your life. Be fair and be just. Ephesians 6 verse 15. And your feet fitted with readiness for the gospel of peace. That means to be kind, be considerate, compassionate. Choose to live in peace with others. Forgive them. Live and let live. Ephesians 6 verse 16. In every situation, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. In other words, have faith in yourself that you will be okay, that this too shall pass. Believe you will overcome your calamity, and faith in yourself will extinguish society's arrows of negativity constantly bombarding you, stealing your peace of mind, with all the monsters I spoke before: anxiety, worry, doubt, fear, depression, anger, hate, and greed. Ephesians 6 verse 17. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, the truth. In other words, think positive. The helmet of salvation means to be optimistic, especially during tough times. That's the helmet of salvation. That's when the good fight is fought, during tough times. It's easy to think positive when everything is going well, but it's during troubled times that we must be optimistic and force ourselves to think about what we want to happen and not what we fret to happen. The sword of the Spirit is the word of God, the truth or wisdom. Speak in facts and you'll never be wrong. Seek wisdom. Wisdom is the best company for our soul when we feel sad, depressed, angry, and dealing with any of the other monsters in our mind and in our heart. It's written that like honey is sweet to our taste, wisdom is sweet to our soul. Wisdom will provide a moral guide so that we can do the right thing and the fair thing that will put us on the right path. Proverbs 21 verse 3 states, to do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. By doing the right thing, being honest, telling the truth, being fair, and practicing having faith in ourselves will bring peace to our conscience. And a clear conscience makes the greatest pillow. Let they who are at peace have no questions, nor doubts, nor fears. Until one is at peace, they are not free. I hope you enjoyed this presentations of the riddles in the treasure map to the Labyrinth of Life. Next time I will cover other riddles I've discovered that are ubiquitous throughout the instructional book of life, also known as the Bible. Until then, don't take grief from anyone. Don't give anybody grief either. Happy findings and Godspeed.